So, Caleb, as you think about some of the big picture things that you learned in the Army, and as you look to take those into first your career as a consultant for 4 years working with clients, and then now as a business owner, what's maybe one thing, if you've got one thing that you would say is sort of applicable and that you've been able to use from your experience in the Army, maybe in a different way in some of these different, more corporate settings?
One of the leadership principles that we didn't touch on yet that I thought was just a really great lesson that I learned in the Army was to put yourself where you're in best control of your element. So how that relates to the Army, I was thinking, going into this thing, I'm going to be an infantry officer. I want to be the one kicking down the doors because that looks like it's the most exciting and it's dangerous and you should lead from the front. And, I agree, you should lead from the front. But, if you're the one who's always kicking down the doors as a platoon leader, for example, there's the rest of your element that you're not directing and controlling at that point. So I learned very quickly that although it looks cool in the movies, and you want to be the tough person kicking down the doors, as an officer, that's probably not where you're going to best control your element. So how I would say that relates to something like management consulting. If you're managing a project and you have a team of analysts helping you on this project, and it can be easy to get bogged down in things like, hey, these PowerPoint slides for this presentation aren't really looking as nice as I want them to. I'll just fix them myself. Well, you've just removed yourself from the point where you could better control your element, and you got bogged down doing spending a bunch of your own precious hours fixing these slides, which is important. I don't argue that, but there's, you gotta always think about what are all the things that you're not doing by taking yourself out of a position to better direct the efforts of others. So not sure if that's what you were looking for, but I think that, that is one good leadership principle that I learned in the military that I think is applicable to all businesses as well.
I think it's great. I think we've talked through so many wonderful things that I think are pretty universal. One is, we talked about sort of the how of leadership and this idea of confident humility, where you can be genuinely, authentically confident in your abilities and your skill sets, but also humble. We've talked about the idea of a nested mission, where you understand what's the overall organizational objective and how do I direct the efforts of myself and my team within that broader organizational context. And then, okay, really tactically, how do you do that? I mean, this sort of gets back to the idea that of just driving role clarity. And, we often use the RACI tool, which I know you're familiar with, Caleb, but just defining who's responsible and accountable for what. And as a leader, being thoughtful and deliberate in where is your role in the organization and how can you put yourself in the best position to serve as a leader and direct the rest of your team to direct the overall project forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that the leader shouldn't be willing to dive in and get their hands dirty and do some of the, help fix the PowerPoint slides if it's crunch time and maybe that is the best place that you can be to help support your team at that moment. Maybe it is time for that. So I'm not saying that maybe as an officer, you might find yourself in a situation where it's applicable that you're the one kicking down the door. I think as a leader, you have to be willing to get your hands dirty and do the work, not just delegating everything out all the time. But just, again, as long as that's a thoughtful and deliberate decision that you're making.
Yeah. And you do that a lot now, right? Where you and your business partner are in all the big strategic conversations. You're driving the strategy of your organization, but you're also the one executing it and working with clients and setting up financial plans and helping them, coaching and advising them on a daily basis to help achieve their objective, which ultimately is financial stability and utilizing their resources to the best of your ability to help them achieve the life goals that they have. So I think that there's this idea of the person that's in the strategic conversation oftentimes is also the person driving and executing as well, which again you're doing in your daily job right now.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's a major difference between the role I'm in now and some of my previous experiences. There's a lot more of the individual contributor nature to my current job.
Yeah.
But, I still think a lot of these same principles apply, because at the end of the day, we're trying to help people make good decisions with their money and for their own financial life. So, there is still some leadership, I guess, involved with that. It's just, it's different than managing a project team or leading a platoon in the Army. But you're right, I think a lot of the same principles apply.